Hey mamas, you're listening to the Balanced Working Mama podcast, the only podcast teaching you how to balance your work, motherhood, and wellness. I am Dr. Amber Thornton, clinical psychologist and mama wellness consultant. Each week we dive into tips and strategies and much more so that you too can become a balanced working mama. Let's dive in. Hey mama, I want to quickly tell you about the Empower Wellness Program. This is a dynamic 6-week group for working mothers who are tired of feeling overwhelmed, fatigued, burdened by mom guilt, but then also just not having enough time for themselves. This program takes all of that and transforms it into more wellness, more time for yourself, better priorities, community with other mothers, but then overall balance in your work, motherhood, and wellness. To learn more about the Empower Wellness Program, head over to balanceworkingmama.com. There you can find when the next program begins, what to expect, but then also how to sign up. Hope to see you in the next group. All right, mamas, let's dive in. So, I realized that over the course of season 2, I think season 2 was great, y'all. We had a bunch of guests. We had some dope topics we talked about. But I realized I never took the time to simply just talk about, you know, how I'm doing, um, how pregnancy is going, and my plans for all of that. And so that's what this episode is going to be about. I really just wanted to take a moment to just talk about what pregnancy and postpartum looks like for me before and what I'm hoping will be different this time around. So sit back, relax, and enjoy me kind of just talking through, what I learned in my first pregnancy with my son, how that postpartum experience went, and then all the things that I'm doing differently this time. So let me just start from the top. Let's talk about the first time. So for those of you who already know, you're probably aware I do have one son. His name is Cedric. We call him C3 because he's a third. And I was pregnant with him the latter part of 2018. He was born in May of 2019. And that was, when I think about my first pregnancy, it was pretty uneventful for the most part. And I think we always hope for that. I always know whenever I go to my appointments, the doctor's like, "Yeah, pretty uneventful. That's what you want." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, absolutely." And that was definitely the case for that pregnancy. I remember I had very minimal morning sickness. Like, really all I experienced was if I don't eat, I get nauseous. So I learned very quickly, girl, you better eat. Where's your snacks? Eat your snacks, drink your water, and you're good. So that was my experience with that. I just was very sleepy for the first trimester. Yeah, I remember I slept so much. I slept so much. I remember my husband was just like, "Yeah, that was a great time because you were just always asleep." And he was right. Like, I would literally come home from work. I would like get on the couch, fall asleep, and then he would like forcefully nudge me to get my ass up so I could go to bed. Then I would go to bed, and then do it all over again. And on the weekends, I was on the couch sleep the whole weekend because I was tired. That's really what my first trimester was just me sleeping the whole time away. Um, Finally, in the second trimester, I got a little bit of my energy back and I was able to work out again. So, also those of you who follow along on Instagram or know me, I like to exercise. I'm really into my physical fitness. And so, at that time in 2018, I was going to the gym because there was no pandemic. And so my routine back then was waking up at like 4:30 in the morning, getting to the gym, getting home by about 6 so that I was able to then get to work on time by about 8:30. That worked super well for me back then. And the second trimester was when I finally was able to get back to the gym because I had no energy to do it in my first trimester. So I was going to the gym. It was cool because I was like the pregnant lady in the gym, and everybody was all like, "Oh, when are you due? Are you pregnant?" I was like, "Yeah, girl, I'm out here." I just remember I don't know why that always like stood out to me. Like I just remember when I was in graduate school seeing pregnant women in the gym and just being like, damn, I want that. Like I want to be able to still take care of my body in the ways I need to while being pregnant, while having children. And I feel like I've been able to successfully do that. And I'm proud of myself for that. So that was me in the gym, pregnant. And it was cool. It worked really well. Um, Again, for the most part, that pregnancy was very uneventful. There was one incident I had during that first pregnancy where it was actually like a series of short events that landed me in the hospital right around 18 weeks. Um, I remember it was during the holiday time, during Christmas holiday. And so me and my husband traveled to Ohio to visit with my family. And of course, we got sick. It feels like it never fails. And that's why we were not playing around with this in 2020. Whenever we go to Ohio to visit my family, one of us gets sick with like a cold or something. But as you all know, when you're sick in pregnancy, that is a whole different type of sick. Like it would have otherwise just simply been a cold if I wasn't pregnant, but when you're pregnant, like your immune system is a bit suppressed. But then also you can't really take all the medications that you used to because you're pregnant. You're growing a baby. And so I was so miserable for like 3 weeks after that. I was coughing. And if y'all have ever had a bad cough when you're pregnant, it feels like your stomach's going to blow up. Or that's what it felt like to me. Like, and it's also hard to cough because you're trying to like protect your, it was just too much. So I got really sick. But then with that, I had a bleed that was really unexpected and really sudden. I woke up one night in the middle of the night at around 18 or 19 weeks and was heavily bleeding. And that was call for us to go to the hospital. We immediately rushed to the emergency room at 4 in the morning. Um, Turns out I had what they call what do they call it? Like, what is the term? I should have Googled this before because I forgot. Um, Basically an angry cervix. And so some of you who have gone through pregnancy, you may have experienced this. When you are pregnant, your cervix is a lot more sensitive. There's a lot more blood vessels and blood flowing. And some of us, our cervixes are just a little bit more angry than others. And so that was the case for me. My cervix was just really irritated and it bled a lot. Like, and that was actually a really scary experience for me because that was the one time where, as we know, Black maternal health is really important, and we see a lot of dangerous statistics and discrepancies in terms of outcomes. That was the time where I thought I was going to bleed out. Like, I was literally in the hospital and they were prepping me for a blood transfusion. They were like telling me like we might have to do this, and I was so scared. Luckily, they didn't have to do it. They were able to stop the bleeding. They found the source of the bleeding. All the while, my son was just in there having fun. He was fine. And so that was a blessing. And it was a blessing that they were able to find why I was bleeding and stop it. But that was very scary. So, aside from that event, my pregnancy was very uneventful. After that, I didn't have any other issues with my cervix. Pregnancy just went on as usual, which was good. Finished out my second trimester really well. Got to my third trimester and I got more tired because I was heavy. Like just simply the basics of like putting your clothes on and walking to your job and all that was just so fucking tiring. Ooh, excuse me. Y'all know I say bad words. Um and so I was not able to work out as much, which was a little bit of a bummer, but it is what it is. Instead, I elected to just walk around my neighborhood. So that was actually the time when a lot of my neighbors and my immediate community realized, like, oh, there's this pregnant woman walking around all the time. And I got to know a lot of them through that experience, which was actually kind of cool. The only other thing that popped up for me in my third trimester, and actually this is something I don't hear a lot of women talk about, and I think it's just because it's not as common, but I ended up being group B strep positive. And y'all remember that test they give, I think it's in the third trimester, to check for whether you have group B strep. And so that is basically just a bacteria that lives in your vagina at any time. And it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong or that there's any like illness or infection or anything, but it could potentially be dangerous for a baby if there is a vaginal delivery. And so I was group B strep positive. And so what that meant for me, which was a bummer for my birth plan, is that as soon as my water breaks, I had to go to the hospital because they wanted to administer antibiotics to keep baby safe during the birthing process. That sucked because my original birth plan was to labor at home as long as I could and then go to the hospital when it was time. But I wasn't able to do that. I had to go pretty immediately. Um, what else was I going to say about that? I think I don't. That was it. Oh, I was just gonna say, with group B strep, I remember when I found that out, I did some research, and there are a lot of mamas who choose to not take the antibiotics. They still choose to labor at home or to continue with their birth plan, and that's definitely um, up to anybody. Like, y'all know I say this all the time, you have to make the best decision for you. And for me, I felt like I felt more comfortable and safer to just move forward with the plan of getting the antibiotics and doing what I needed to do. And that's what I did. So that was it. My original birth plan the first time around was an unmedicated vaginal birth. That's what I wanted. That's not what I got. And I just think that's a testament to when you are preparing for birth. And yeah, when you're preparing for birth, it's good to plan. It's good to have an idea of what you would like to happen, but you also have to be very flexible and open to change. And that was the case for me. Um, my water ended up breaking 1 week before I was due. It was actually funny. I worked that day. I remember being so tired at work that day. I took some naps on the couch in between clients. I was just so tired of walking around. I remember telling my colleague at work, I was like, girl, I don't think I'm going to make it. This might have to be my last day. Like, I just couldn't do it. And who knew it was because my water was about to break that night. So I was at home that night. It was like 9 p.m. Me and my husband was on the couch. I was about to go to bed. And then I just felt like something funny down there. It just felt strange. So I was like, let me go to the bathroom. And I was like, okay, I know I didn't pee on myself. This must be that thing when they say your water broke. So I went back down to the stairs and I told my husband, I was like, I think my water broke. He was like, are you sure? And I was like, no, I'm not sure. I was like, let me check back. Like, I'm going to just give it like 15 more minutes and then I'll go check. And sure enough, there was still a little light trickle. And so that's how we learned. My water broke and I cried a little bit because I was not ready. I was very nervous. It was my very first time giving birth. But luckily, my husband is such a rock, such a foundation. He was just so excited. He was like, yeah, let's do it. Come on. So we went to the hospital. We got my antibiotics to treat the group B strep. And I labored. Labored. And, ooh, y'all, contractions? Let's just have a moment of silence for that. Because that was incredibly difficult for me. And I think everyone's labor experience is so different. But for me, it was interesting. I did not feel any labor or contractions prior to my water breaking. But then as soon as it broke, maybe about an hour or two later, I started to feel light cramping, and then it just progressed from there. So when I showed up at the hospital, I was about 3 or 4 centimeters dilated already, which again, it was a shock to me because I was like, who knew? I was able to labor all the way up to about 7 centimeters, and then I was just screaming for help because that pain was excruciating. And I'm going to come back to this. I'm going to put a pin in this, a mental pin, because I now realize what would have helped me in a different way. And so I'm going to talk about that in what I plan to do differently this time around. But I ended up getting an epidural. And oh my God, it felt so much better. It felt so much better. Um, with my first pregnancy, I had a lot of very strong opinions about medicated versus unmedicated births. And I think that experience has definitely made those opinions more flexible for me. Um, I I had every intention of seeking out an unmedicated birth. Um, and I'll be very honest, a lot of it was because I was very afraid of the epidural itself. I'm one that gets very nervous and anxious when it comes to medical procedures. And so I just rather not. And that was driving a lot of my decision around being unmedicated. I don't want all that extra stuff. I just want to do it. But getting that epidural for me was so helpful, and I actually liked that epidural because I was still able to feel my legs. I still was able to move and be in different positions, but it took so much of the intensity out of that contractions, and so I could just rest. I was able to rest. And so from there, I got that epidural. Girl, I put my little eye mask on. They closed those lights down and I took a nap. Okay. Next thing you know, they popped in every now and then to check me. And then they were like, oh, you're 10 centimeters. Let's get started. And I was like, oh, okay. I felt so refreshed. I felt ready. Um, and so again, I'm thankful for that epidural. I'm thankful that I made that decision in the moment because I think it was everything I needed. So, um, another part of how the birth plan didn't go in my favor is that I did not end up birthing vaginally. I ended up with a C section. And so, from what I understand now, my son was in a position that just would not allow him to come down the birth canal without causing some sort of distress for his head. They said that there was a lot of coning every time I pushed, and I pushed for 2 hours, and he was not making his way down. They were concerned about what was happening with his head, so we went to C section. That was also like the second scariest experience of my life. The first one was that initial bleed, and then the second one was that C section. Again, all the stuff that I've heard about Black women in birth started to flood back to me, and I really think I was so scared. That's one unfortunate part about that birth experience is that during that C-section, I was so afraid. I was not able to be present in that moment to just appreciate the fact that I was birthing my son. I was too focused on, am I going to survive this? I was that afraid. And I just remember I kept asking the doctors, like, am I okay? Is everything okay? Like, is it okay? And then they just kept reassuring me, but I was so afraid. I just kept praying to God, like, God, please let us make it out of this. Let us make it out of this. Luckily, everything was fine. We made it out. My baby was born. He cried. I cried. My husband cried. We were very, 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 very happy. But again, it just goes to show things don't always go the way that we plan. And that was the case for me. Um, I was so relieved to no longer be pregnant. I was so relieved to have made it through that experience because I was afraid that I wouldn't, and I did, and I'm so grateful for it. Postpartum was not bad for me. I think the toughest part was healing from the C-section. That shit is hard. Walking down, up and down the steps, getting up and off the couch, like, oh God, it was hard. It was hard. Even though when I think back to it, by about week 2, I I was mobile, and by week 3, I was okay, but it was tough. I breastfed my son. We had some initial complications with getting him to latch, but I did connect with a lactation consultant, and that was super duper helpful. Um, my husband went back to work after 2 weeks, and then it was me and my son getting used to one another, us crying together because we were tired and frustrated. But all in all, postpartum, I really have no complaints about. I then ended up transitioning back to work at about 8 weeks. And that was something I was trying to think through, thinking back and forth about. I am one where I just, y'all know, I love working. I really do. And so I at the time just couldn't imagine um staying home for a full 12 weeks. I really needed a little bit of um flexibility in terms of what my days look like. Being home all day with a newborn felt really daunting to me. So it gave me like a boost, or like it was like a breath of fresh air to know that, hey, on Monday you're going to get to go to work. And so that's how I started. Week 8, I transitioned very gradually. And this was something I negotiated with my supervisor, where the first week I just went to work one day. The second week, I went 2 days. The third week, I went 3 days. Fourth week, 4 days. Fifth week, I was back full time. And so that took me up to about like 14 weeks. And so from 8 to 14 weeks postpartum, I was just gradually transitioning back to work. And that worked really well for me. Um, so that was my pregnancy and postpartum at that point. Um, Now at this point, I am pregnant again in 2020. I am currently 18 weeks. Actually, by the time that most of you all listen to this, I will be 19 weeks pregnant. Um, and there's definitely some things that I would like to do differently. Like, I like to reflect on that first pregnancy because I think I learned so much, I grew so much, and I'm able to look back at that and say, okay, this has worked well for me. This is what worked well for me. And these are the things that I want to make sure that I change. And so I took some notes on the things that are a little bit different for me now in pregnancy, but then also some changes that I hope to see in my pregnancy and postpartum this time around. Again, all the while knowing that things might change and I have to be flexible with that, but it's okay for me to really plan out what I'm hoping for and what I would like to see happen. So, first of all, y'all, pregnancy when you have a toddler, girl, don't recommend it. I don't recommend it. And y'all gonna do it anyways because you know how when you have a baby and then you go through all the horrible stuff and then afterwards it's just like you totally forget and you're like, oh, I can do it again. That's kind of how it is. So, pregnancy with a toddler is different. I don't get to sleep all day like I did the first time. I just don't. I probably don't think I have taken a nap yet. And it's just because the responsibilities are different. But also one thing that I've noticed is that my body is a little bit more tired, and it's evident because as soon as my son goes to bed, I usually watch a little bit of TV with my husband, but bro, I don't be making it through them episodes no more. Like, I'm falling asleep during our shows. I'm missing everything because I'm tired. But I feel like I have a little bit more energy in that I don't feel the need to sleep all of the weekend, but it's just more like, okay, you need to go to bed now because it's bedtime right now. So my energy is different, but definitely being pregnant with a toddler, it just requires a different level of energy that I think my body has somewhat accounted for, but my mind is still like, oh my God, I'm pregnant and I have a toddler. Like, it's different. Secondly, with 2020, of course, things have been really, really crazy, but the one um, upside is that I've been able to work from home. And so that has given me this flexibility that I think I absolutely needed during pregnancy. Working from home means that I don't have to go through the commute and the hustle and bustle of all of that. I get to basically work in my PJs as long as my top is presentable and I'm good. And so that has allowed me to have a different level of rest, which now that I'm talking about it out loud, because my days feel a little bit more restful than they would if I were actually working in person, that's probably why my body's not needing so much rest on the weekends or in the evenings. And so, hey, I made that connection just now. Secondly, what's different is that I'm able to work out a little bit more consistently. So before I was maybe working out 2 to 3 days a week. Now I'm working out 4 to 5 days a week. And again, it's because I'm at home. We invested in some workout equipment and it easily allows me to just go downstairs and get on the bike or go downstairs and do the yoga or whatever I'm going to do. So having that access makes it more likely that I do it, but also, I think my body is now just used to, oh, I work out 4 to 5 times a week. And even while pregnant, my body's already conditioned to it. And I love that. So I'm hoping to continue to maintain that routine of 4 to 5 days a week. Probably when I get into my third trimester, I don't know, it'll be tough because it'll be the winter time, but I would like to get outside and do more walking. But we'll see. Another change that I've made this time in pregnancy is I have hired a doula. Okay. So last time, the first time, I went back and forth about whether I needed a doula, basically the whole pregnancy. And then I got to the point where it's just like, I'm almost due. I'll be fine. I trusted myself. I trusted my husband, and we both showed up and showed out. Like, I did all I could. My husband was like the calming, stable rock that he always is, and I needed him to be. But what I learned in that moment, and remember when I was putting a mental pin while I was telling the story before, is that specifically, I think what I needed that I didn't realize is in those moments with those contractions, I needed a different type of voice that knew what was going on and that could coach me through that. I didn't have that because I didn't really know, but also my husband didn't really know. He was able to just kind of like rub my back or my hand or just be there, but I needed a different level of support that had, just something that a doula could give. And so this time I have hired a doula, and I let her know I specifically need help in those moments when I'm laboring, to stay focused and keep my eye on the prize, but also just a nice, calming, reassuring voice that everything is okay. So I have hired a doula. My birth plan this time around, again, is a little bit different for the first time. I am hoping for a VBAC. And so those of you who don't know what a VBAC is a vaginal birth after C-section. Um, I would say that like in my mother's time and well, maybe not my grandmother's time because I just feel like things were different. But like I would say most of like the time of like our mothers giving birth, having a vaginal birth after you've had a C-section was pretty unheard of. Now things have changed. I think the medical field has come around to the idea of, oh, this is possible. Yes, there are some risks, but the risks are fairly low. And so we're hearing more about women having vaginal births after they've had a C-section. That is what I'm hoping for. Um, I am in a good position because right now I don't have any birth complications. The reason for my C-section was not something that was like a very serious ordeal. So I am a candidate for a VBAC at this time. But again, things always can change. Actually, in my last appointment, me and my doctor talked a little bit more about the factors that would increase my likelihood of a VBAC versus not. And too detailed to really get into, but now I have a better idea of, yes, I want a VBAC, but I also know that if certain things go a certain way, then I will likely have another C-section. And so I'm really working on in the next coming weeks to level my expectations, be very realistic about myself, really shoot for what I want, but also accept if I have to have another C-section. So either way, VBAC is the plan. As far as medicated or unmedicated, I'm still on the fence about that. And what I have told myself is that honestly, the ultimate goal is a vaginal birth if possible, because I do not want to have another surgery. And if minimizing my pain in those moments can help keep me in the game, then I will get an epidural. So I'm still waiting to hear and feel what my intuition and what my gut is telling me. But right now, my gut is saying an epidural was very helpful the first time. It might be helpful the second time around as well. But we'll see. But just in general, this time around, I feel more relaxed. I feel like I have a much better idea of what to expect. And so I'm not spending so much time doing a lot of research or trying to figure things out about birth and the experience, or like even just the things of like planning out the room and the nursery, all of that. Like I've done all of that. And so I have a better idea of what's coming. And so my energies can go in a different place. I think another huge thing that is different this time around is during my first pregnancy, I was not working for myself. I didn't have my consulting practice and I didn't have Balanced Working Mama, but now I do. And so I am finding that I'm having to definitely shift my mental and emotional energies between um, two very important things. I want to continue to grow and maintain my business. And all the while, I do have to plan for what it'll look like to have another baby and have our family grow from 3 to 4. So, yeah, it's interesting. It's different this time around, and I am appreciating the differences. I am trying to be flexible, and I'm really working on accepting anything that comes my way. So, I think the last thing that will be slightly different for me is the postpartum experience, of course. I think, anybody, when you have multiple pregnancies, multiple children, your pregnancies, but then also your postpartum experiences are just different from one to the other. You can't always expect it to be the same. There's going to be some differences. And so for me, um, what I anticipate is that this time around in postpartum, I will be asking for a different level of support. Um, the first time, my mother-in-law was very helpful in making some meals and just coming by if we needed, which was helpful at the time. But now again, I have a toddler. And so I'm this is still something I'm trying to think through, but I imagine that when I come home with the new baby, I will want to make sure that my son is taken care of. But it might need to be that he's with his grandparents for a few days, just so that we can get settled, and just so that we can, get back into the house, settle down, and then he can come back in, and then we can introduce baby and Tyler. And so, again, I'm thinking through that, but I know that my extended family will be involved in a different way, because we are going to need some support in really making sure that my son is taken care of while we introduce new baby into the family. Also, something I'll do differently in postpartum is that if I need lactation support, I'm not going to wait. The first time I waited about 2 weeks, and ugh, I don't want to wait anymore. I now know how valuable it is to call up a lactation consultant and have her come out and look at what's going on, give you some tips and solutions. And so I'm definitely going to do that more immediately. I'm not going to try to like struggle through it, hope things get better. No, if the latch is not happening the first day or so, we need to call someone to make sure that we can make this happen. And then lastly, something that's going to be different is that I this time want to experience the full 12 weeks of postpartum before I go back to work. And again, things change. The first time, I don't think I would have made it through 12 weeks of postpartum. Like, I'll just be very honest with you all. Like, I really wanted to go back to work because I was craving feeling some sort of normalcy. And it was not normal for me to just be home with a newborn all day, every day, for weeks at a time. So I really needed to just tap into those other identities. And we talk about that in Balanced Working Mama, about fully living in all of your identities. Yes, I was a mom, but I also really wanted to still tap into the things that I knew made me feel good, especially in those moments where there's not a lot of gratification when you have a newborn. So at that time, I really wanted to get back to work. But this time around, um, I feel a little bit differently. I look forward to taking the full 12 weeks, just being home with the baby, but then also having some extra time with my son, and us, kind of adjusting to what it's like to be a family of four, me taking really good care of my body this time around. And yeah, I'm going to really try to embrace that. So my goal is to take a full 12 weeks off of work. And when I say work, I mean I mean my full-time job, my work for balanced working mama honestly is still up in the air. That's the part that's really hard because right now I have no problem saying, yeah, I'm gonna take 12 weeks off of my full-time job, but it's a little bit different when you do own your own business and you are an entrepreneur. Essentially, if I take time off, that means the money stops, or the momentum stops, and it's hard to get those things back. And so I'm thinking through some ideas or some shifts of what will balanced working mama look like while I'm on maternity leave. I likely will continue to do the podcast because again, it'll give me a little project to work on and kind of give me some excitement while I'm home with baby. Um, my April Empower Wellness program might either be delayed or just not happen at all. And I feel mixed about that. But realistically, I know that if I'm having a baby in April, I cannot facilitate Empower Wellness program. And that's, something I'm thinking through and, we'll see how that's going to go. Um, but, I probably will still be doing some light work for Balanced Working Mama, but not a ton because I know I want to rest. I want to take care of my body. I want to get to know the new baby and I deserve all that. I need all of that. We need that as a family. So, postpartum is going to be different. I'm going to take my 12 weeks. And luckily, I'm in a new full time position where there is naturally a transition period built in for mothers who have just had babies, which is amazing. Um, and so what'll happen is I'll get my full 12 weeks, but then when I return after the 12 weeks, there's a flexible schedule so that I can transition back in a way that feels comfortable and still get paid all my money. So, yes, I love it. So, postpartum's going to be different. The pregnancy experience so far is, a little different and I'm accepting all of these changes. All in all, I feel really good. I feel very hopeful. I feel very calm. I feel very relaxed. I feel like this pregnancy is going slower. Like there's just something about the time where I'm like, damn, I'm still 18 weeks, like I'm still in my second trimester. It just feels like it should be further along, but I'm really also trying to appreciate the slowness of it because there are a lot of things to do. There's a lot of things to take care of and I need that time. So, I thank you all for allowing me to share a little bit about my experience and my process today. It's just nice sometimes to just talk it through and share what I've gone through and the things that I'm hoping to have done the second time around. But, I appreciate all of y'all support, people who are checking in on me, asking how I'm going, how it's going, but also all of you that support Balanced Working Mama. It means so much to me. So I thank you all. I hope this either taught you something or something resonated with you, or maybe there's something that you might change in your next pregnancy and postpartum experience. But either way, I'll definitely still be keeping y'all updated, especially on Instagram. And we're out. Hey, Mama, I'm so glad you're listening to the podcast, but I also want to connect with you on social media. So be sure to follow me and Balanced Working Mama on Instagram. You can find me at Dr. Amber Thornton. That's DrAmberThornton, and Balanced Working Mama at Balanced Working Mama. BALANCEDWORKINGMAMA. Follow along, join in on the fun, but then also send me a DM to say hello. See you there. All right, Mama. So, I almost forgot that we still have homework. So very quickly, Balanced Working Mama homework for this episode. Because I talked a ton about pregnancy and postpartum today, it really put me in the mind of what new mothers or future mothers or women who are hoping to become mothers, what they might need and just the different experiences that they have and all of the emotions of, what to expect and what to anticipate, things like that. And so the homework for today is I want you to do something for me. Um, Please, please, please reach out to a new mama, a future mama, a woman who is hoping to become a mama and connect her to Balanced Working Mama. This helps me because it just continues to help Balanced Working Mama support and reach a lot of mamas. But also, I want to make sure that our new mamas and our pregnant mamas, our expecting mamas are taken care of. And so for homework today, definitely connect someone you know to Balance Working Mama. And you can do this by sharing the podcast with them. You can let them know to follow me on Instagram. They can follow Balance Working Mama on Instagram. Show them how to join the email newsletter. And if you haven't done that, you should do it too. All you've got to do is go to balanceworkingmama.com. There's going to be a little pop-up that says, hey, stay in touch or something like that. You just put your information in there and you'll get a weekly email from me. But there's so many ways to connect that mama to Balanced Working Mama, and I hope that you will do that. So that's our homework for today. I look forward to talking with y'all next time. Hey, mama. Thank you for listening to the Balanced Working Mama podcast. If you love this podcast, please be sure to rate it and share it with another mama that you know. And don't forget to follow me and Balanced Working Mama on Instagram. I'll talk to you soon.